If someone came to me and said they don't believe in God, I'd be like, well, okay, well now we can have a really interesting conversation, because no one's beliefs are checked at the door. It's not the heart of Judaism. And indeed, doubt, questioning, and sometimes even anger at God, if God exists, is a very normal and natural part of Jewish life. How I define religion, it's a set of theological beliefs. The problem comes when you try and associate religion with Judaism. It's one of the connections you can make, but not all Jews believe in God. I'm Rabbi Cohen from Kol Ami synagogue. You could also say Judaism's a nation, but not everyone lives in the land of Israel. And you could say we're a race, but not everybody's born Jewish or has Jewish blood. Some people choose to be Jewish. Even though, yes, religion is a set of theological beliefs, that's not where Judaism sits. I prefer to think of us as a big dysfunctional family, or maybe, think of us as having a shared origin story, whether you're born Jewish or chosen to be Jewish. The one term that is kind of a record scratch moment for me is when someone uses the word faith in connection with religion, because that's just not a Jewish word. Technically, again, the word we use is dat, which is the best word in Hebrew for religion, but we don't really talk about us being part of a religion. The most common thing, I would say, is the phrase Am Yisrael, which is a way of saying the Jewish people. Some Jews believe in a Messiah, like a particular person who will come, and there's different ideas. Maybe there'll be an ultimate conflict before a time of peace and perfection without war, hunger, strife, poverty, or that the Messiah figure will bring that moment more directly. Other Jews believe in a messianic era. We're in partnership with God to slowly but surely perfect the world, to rid the world of suffering. I think there's, as I understand it, a fair amount of crossover between the Jewish and Christian idea of the Messiah. It's just whether we're waiting for the first visit or for the second coming.
You do have different groups, different communities, like Reform Judaism, Conservative, Orthodox. You got Hasidic Judaism. So one question I would have is, how is that diversity seen? Is it seen as divisive, or is it seen as opportunities of different expressions?
Oh yeah, I mean, it can be terrible and it can be fantastic. I think one of the ways that you could organize the different denominations is how they view our most sacred text, the Torah. So more along the Orthodox end, they would say, Exodus 19 and 20, God dictates the Torah to Moses on the mountain, literally happened for those groups. And then as you go through conservative and reform, it's more that humans wrote that document, but were inspired by God in some way. When they look back on their work, they kind of figure they had help. So those are some of the philosophical differences that we have. Reform Judaism, you would describe it as being rooted in tradition, responding to change. So doing that weird balancing act between the old and the new. So, ever since Jews left the ghetto in the emancipation and started to take on ideas beyond Judaism in the Enlightenment period, a few hundred years ago, then we started using or acknowledging what was going on in the modern world. Now I would say that's a massive strength of Reform Judaism and a massive weakness, because we're always trying to work out where the barrier between the Jewish people is and the outside world. Generally I would say it's a strength, but you always have to constantly think about where you are, old versus new. The value placed on personal freedom and autonomy plays out in the sense that there are more people who are Reform Jews than any other kind of Jew, because there is more personal autonomy within that Reform Jewish framework. there's a bit more power given to the individual to make decisions about their Jewish life.
And now we can get into kind of a bigger contemporary issue that we're seeing within the news. Yeah. You've got the rise of anti-Semitism, which is not new, the state of Israel. And I know that's a big question with a lot of components, but what are your general thoughts of that?
Yeah, so I think the problem comes with Israel and Palestine is when we try and just go with one side or the other. So Israelis and Palestinians are both worthy of respect and having their own country to live in peace and security. That's the most important thing for me to say. I think what I would also say, both Jews and Palestinians have perfectly valid claims to the land. And so it's about how to work together and live together. The problem I have is when people ask me, what's the reason for anti-Semitism? Then I have to say it's not my problem, right? It's the anti-Semites' problem and it's the non-Jewish world's problem because there's not always logic attached. So I think anti-Semites and the non-Jewish world have to look at themselves and not necessarily ask Jews, so what's the reason for anti-Semitism? It's not our problem, it's your problem.
One thing that's really quickly noticeable if you come to a service within the synagogue is the centrality of the scroll, the flame above the scroll, the 10 Commandments above that. And so with this imagery, it's clear to the outside observer coming in that there's something more than special about this. This is central to this community. So maybe you can explain something about the ritual behind that, the importance of that, and kind of the role that plays for the community itself.
So every Torah scroll has the same 5 books of Moses inside of it. Although when we do talk about Torah, when someone says, I'm going to study some Torah, they're not only they can be talking about the 5 books, but Torah is also just the Hebrew word for teaching or instruction. So they could also just be talking about the fact that they're going to study some Jewish stuff, another Jewish text, not just the Torah, the 5 books itself. But the scroll itself, you know, when it's paraded around the room, then people follow it so as not to turn their back on it. You'll see people wearing prayer shawls with fringes on the end of them. The knots and windings add and multiply up to the 613 mitzvot, the commandments, the Jewish actions that I mentioned before, that are somewhere in the scroll. And so we press the fringes to the physical scroll to make the connection between the two symbols. And so a few years ago, I know you might have witnessed the new scroll being written. So someone as a gift to the community will sponsor a particular scroll. People might sponsor particular letters just to have that physical connection with the object and with the ideas behind it. When there's a bar bat mitzvah, a coming of age ceremony in Judaism, then the grandparents will physically pass the scroll to the parents who will pass it to the child. To show the chain of tradition, and so it's the center of everything that we do.
This brings up an important theme, I think, that's important in religion, is a question of education. Yeah. Who's the ones getting educated? Is it a specialization?
But in terms of education in general, then it's everything. It really is. You know, I mean, if you would describe Judaism, there's kind of worship, there's education, and then there's good deeds, right? And that's essentially Judaism in a nutshell. But with regard to education, one of the names of a synagogue is Beit Midrash, House of Study, and it's all about lifelong learning. So wherever you are on your Jewish journey, we're going to take you to the next stage. But education is one of the key things. And so every age group, doesn't matter who you are, you're going to be studying something to get you to the next chapter in your Jewish journey.